Now, question, what do British parliamentarians most frequently associate with the term evangelicals? Answer, evangelicals are opposed to the use of condoms. I'm afraid that doesn't say much for our MPs and peers, but is such a mistaken impression shared by the general public? Some evangelicals fear that the term evangelical has now almost universally negative connotations. As a result, some leading American evangelicals prefer to call themselves biblical or creedal Christians, and the preacher Tony Campolo now describes himself as a red-letter Christian. In a report for the Cambridge Jubilee Centre, Dr. Christopher Watkin has explored what must be done if the term evangelical is to be rescued. He joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, could I ask you about what you would consider to be evangelical? Can you give us a quick definition of what you think people should understand by the term?
Well, the word evangelical comes from the Greek for good news. So, at their core, evangelicals are good news people. The good news about Jesus, that he didn't come to be served by us, but he came to serve us in ministering to our physical needs and in ultimately dying to meet our fundamental spiritual need for peace with God.
But surely all Christians would say that. Doesn't it have more to do with the fact that you give primacy to the Bible and that you believe also that there has to be a direct personal relationship between people and Jesus?
Both of those things are fundamental to evangelical understanding of the Christian faith, but I think the heart of it has to remain the person of Jesus.
But if that's the case, what did your research discover? What's this nature of this and extent of this misunderstanding?
It was quite surprising what we found. You've already mentioned the example of British parliamentarians most frequently associating evangelicals with an opposition to condoms. Another very interesting thing that we found was that the word evangelical is used less and less to talk about any particular understanding of the faith whatsoever, but it's used as an indication of intensity. So, for example, we've got one exchange in Parliament with one MP accusing another of being almost evangelical about learning and education. So, regardless of what you believe, the word is now used to indicate the strength with which you believe it.
It might also to do something with the fact that the evangelicals have got among some people, the sort of people given the impression they're homophobic. Because of your biblical opposition to homosexual practice, the suggestion is that evangelicals are homophobic.
Well, you know, that's not the big issue for a lot of grassroots evangelicals that a lot of people think it is. And I suppose it's natural that the press would find stories like that interesting, but it can be a little frustrating for evangelicals when that's always the association that's made by people, because there's a great good news story to tell about evangelicals, how they're active up and down the country in working in mothers and toddlers groups or in pensioners' drop-ins, the great evangelical tradition of charitable work, setting up charities like Oxfam and Help the Aged, Bernardo's and the Jubilee Centre in Cambridge. And also the great campaigning work. So we think of William Wilberforce, for example, and the campaign against slavery, or the campaign against the practice of sati in India, the burning of wives on the funeral pyres of their husband, all spurred forward by evangelical Christians.
Well, you have a choice, don't you, now? You either find a new term, drop the one, or you defend more positively evangelicalism. What are you going to do?
I don't think it's a question just of defending it. I think it's a question of telling the great positive story about evangelicals that there is to tell. And also finding fresh ways of communicating ageless truths so that people can see their relevance today. I remember Benjamin Disraeli in the House of Commons in 1851 said, "Justice is truth in action." And I think that's a wonderful summary of the way that evangelicals, with the engine of truth, then go out to try and meet the needs of others in society, regardless of whether they're believers or not.
Dr. Christopher Watkin, thank you very much indeed. Now, do you remember Lindo Mann?